Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is caring for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. My guest is former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber. Thank you so much for being with us, Marty. You recently wrote a book about your personal experience with your wife, Elaine. Can you talk about that?
Yes, Lori. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to visit. I'm very grateful for that. The book I wrote is My Two Elaines. And the first Elaine was this wonderful girl I met in freshman high school. I fell in love right away, and we dated, and we went steady, and we got engaged, and we got married, and 4 children, 13 grandchildren, now 11 great-grandchildren. My friend, my advisor, my companion. And then the second Elaine, the same person, began to appear when she was about 63, 64 years of age, and she would get lost driving to and from places she had been driving for the last 10 years. She was a great cook. Sometimes she would mess up recipes so badly she would cry. She would come up with stories that I knew never happened, and it was that was the beginning of the Alzheimer's journey. And I wish it wouldn't have happened. It was a horrible, horrible experience. But what it has done is just brought forward the need for us to understand if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease, and how important it is for us to learn about that a little bit. I'm not talking about the amyloids in the head and the proteins and so forth. I'm talking about the interaction of the person living with Alzheimer's and the caregiver. So on my journey with Elaine, I found out, as there were 2 Elaines, I find out that there were also 2 Martys. The first Marty, who was independent and who would never ask for help and would always correct his wife. Oh, yeah. The second Marty cannot be independent. For his own health and life, he's got to ask for help. And also, it is not necessary to correct your loved one. It's sort of like I took this very arduous trail. There are all kinds of challenges and so forth, and now I've completed that. Now someone else is going to be on the Alzheimer's journey as a caregiver, and I want to say, please sit down and visit with me just a little bit so I can help make it just a little bit easier. Yes, it's painful, it's grieving, it's worry, it's concern, it's anger, it's frustration, it's all of those things rolled into one. And my goal is to help a caregiver learn, cope, and survive, and make that journey a little bit easier.
There are so many caregivers in the United States right now caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, an estimated 6 million people with Alzheimer's, and that number is only going to grow. So this is so important because there are so many caregivers out there who really don't know what they're doing.
Here's what I want every caregiver to understand, and it's very straightforward. A caregiver has a 40% chance of dying before their loved one due to stress-related illness. So understand that, number one. But then also as a caregiver, understand that there are things that you can do to make life better. When Elaine was diagnosed some 20-plus years ago, Alzheimer's could not be cured or prevented. Today, Alzheimer's cannot be cured or prevented. We have this very dire outlook, and so rather than accepting the defeat of this disease, what we can do is make a determination. We are going to help our loved one live their best life possible. And we do that by joining their world. But we also do that by the caregiver taking care of himself or herself.
So there are 2 main prongs to caring for someone who has Alzheimer's, which is joining their world and then taking care of yourself, taking care of yourself, the caregivers. What does it mean to join their world? You mentioned a moment ago, don't correct them. So if they talk about somebody who is deceased, for example, you don't necessarily need to say, no, darling, that person is no longer with us. Or if they think this, don't correct them and say, no, that's not true. That upsets them.
You're exactly right on target. Elaine, in actuality, asked me, how are my parents? I said, they're both dead. No, they're not. She said, Elaine, your parents are both dead. Well, the shock on her face when she realized she didn't say goodbye, much less attend the funeral, I promised myself that I would never put her through that again. So then the next time she asked me, how are my parents? Oh, I said, they're doing well. I said, your mom likes her church work. Your dad likes his... Oh, she said, that makes me feel so good, so good. So that's what I call therapeutic fibbing in the book, therapeutic fibbing.
So they don't need to be right. You don't need to correct them, just as long as they feel happy.
Well, here's the point, joining their world.
Joining their world.
And no matter what the situation is, to join their world. In the early stages, sometimes Elaine would think she had Alzheimer's and so forth, and sometimes not. I was not going to argue with her one way or another what her situation was. And not only joining their world, but there's also a matter of redirection. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Elaine wants a glass of wine. No, you can't have a glass of wine. No. The answer is, you want red wine or white wine? Do you want to drink it in a tall glass or in a smaller glass? And oh, by the way, let's have a cup of coffee while we talk about, in other words, redirection. To try, a caregiver has to sort of be like a detective, to try and realize and remember the kinds of things that their loved one once did. So, for example, Elaine was a great cook. So, in joining her world, we chopped a lot of celery. We chopped a lot of celery. A homemaker, so we would fold towels together. I would take the towels in the other room and shake them out, and we'd come back. In other words, to join their world so that their world too can have meaning. And there are things that can be done to have meaning. If we assume hypothetically that we're on a cruise ship and one of our people fall overboard and we throw them a lifeline and now they're saved. No, they're not saved because the lifeline breaks. Why does it break? Well, because it's frayed. How does the lifeline become frayed? Well, a caregiver is a lifeline for their loved one. And a caregiver, because they don't take care of themselves by not enough sleep, by not eating right, by not enough socialization, by just doing all the basic things, they gnaw at that lifeline and it becomes frayed. And so now you want to help the person who is most important in your life, and you don't have the capability of doing it because it breaks.
That is a great analogy. So we're going to take a break and be right back with former Governor Martin Schreiber. The book is called My Two Elaines, and we're going to talk about, when we come back, how the caregiver can take care of him or herself. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We are talking with former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, who wrote the book My Two Elaines, about how to care for someone with Alzheimer's. You cared for your beloved wife, Elaine, for almost 20 years while she was diagnosed with the disease. And right before the break, you were talking about how important it is for the caregiver to take care of him or herself. This is something that not very many people talk about.
Well, we men, particularly men, sometimes we need a slap aside the head. And I want to be very direct with men about that. And the slap aside the head is to understand that you have to develop a new compassionate mindset. As there are two Elaines, there's also two Martys. And if your name is Sam and you're a caregiver, there has to be two Sams. If your name is Mary and you're a caregiver, there has to be two Marys. The first Marty, independent, I'll do it myself, and can handle everything. I'm going to correct Elaine, and I'm not going to let her make any mistakes and so forth. That's we need a new compassionate mindset. So the second Marty is understanding of the fact that he need not correct his wife. The second Marty understands it's a matter of courage and intelligence to ask for help, to realize that you can't do it alone. The second Marty has to more focus on taking care of himself so that he can be a better caregiver for his wife. Men particularly are just simply, I think we're arrogant, you know, and I think we're selfish. And an example, I'm having a tough time taking care of Elaine. My children have like an intervention. And they say, Dad, if you don't do something, you're going to be dead before Mom. And so it's time for Elaine to go into assisted living. I go through counseling, and I say to the counselor, I cannot see putting Elaine into a home. The counselor said, you are not putting Elaine anyplace. You are giving her an opportunity to be who she is now. Can Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home care take care of her? No. I was breaking down emotionally and drinking too much and all kinds of issues. And so what I began to understand is my personal life was to fight Alzheimer's, which can't, be beaten at this moment in time. And what I began to understand is that I was selfish in my own battle with Alzheimer's. The question is, how do I help my loved one live their best possible life? And that begins, again, I want to repeat something that's doable. We can't beat the disease, but it is doable. And so if we can get back and understand, as there's two Elaines, there's also two Martys. The second Marty that has to understand that you've got to look at this practically and realistically.
So how does a caregiver take care of him or herself? You mentioned getting enough sleep and asking for help, but who do you ask for help from?
Basically, from anyone who can give it to you. Here's the challenge of being a caregiver. It is not what you call a tuna casserole disease. Hypothetically speaking, I have heart operation, I come home, I'm recovering, people bring me tuna casserole. I have hip surgery, I recover tuna casserole. My wife has Alzheimer's. Because people are ignorant of the disease, my friends and neighbors and relatives, because they are ignorant of the disease, they don't know what to do and they don't know what to say, so they stay away. And so what happens then is not only then is the caregiver going through all of this challenging of dealing with their loved ones with Alzheimer's, what they're also going through is a feeling of being abandoned and deserted by friends because they're staying away. So the first Marty would never want to talk with his friends or neighbors or close family about what's going on in his life. The second Marty has to do that and to try and have your close loved ones and relatives understand what it is that you're going through and being able to ask for specific kinds of things. Would you pick up the medications from the drugstore? Would you mind taking the dog for a walk? Would you come and sit with my loved one for a little bit? Caregivers have to understand, and I'm again going directly to men specifically, to ask for help means you're not giving up. To ask for help is a sign of courage. And you cannot be arrogant and selfish and be able to have your loved one live their best life possible, and you cannot then expect yourself to live your best life possible, much less even live through it all.
So if you know somebody, now you're giving advice to people who know someone who's caring for someone with Alzheimer's. So if you know someone who is caring for someone with Alzheimer's, your advice to them is don't stay away because you don't know what to say. Approach them and say, what can I do to help? And maybe it's running errands, sitting with the person while the caregiver takes a break, goes out and exercises or whatever. Give a little bit of advice about if you know someone who's caring for someone with Alzheimer's.
Please understand that simply acknowledging the fact to a caregiver, I understand what you're going through and I know that's a challenge. That in and of itself is just such a comforting experience to know that someone understands what's going on, and that makes a big difference. Then what can you do? Rather than saying, call me if you can need any help, caregivers don't do that. Why? I don't know. We're not very smart, but we just simply don't do that. But to offer, say, can we, pick up your medications, or can we take the dog for a walk, or can we come and sit with your loved one for a bit, or just specific kinds of things that make a difference. If I have heart surgery, I'm going to get better with the tuna casserole. If I hip surgery, I'm going to get better. It takes a lot of tuna casseroles to get through the journey of Alzheimer's, and if friends and relatives or caregivers can just understand, this is maybe an over-dramatization. But if we can remember the Bible story of the person who was in hell and says, if you could just dip your finger on some water and just put it on my tongue, it's such a relief. That may be a little bit of an over-dramatization, but for caregivers, just to have someone understand what you're going through, just to be able to have someone acknowledge that is like a tip of water on a painful experience. Caregiving is one of the toughest jobs in the world. And if a caregiver can understand, joining the world of the person who now is, if a caregiver can now understand it's a matter of courage and a sign you're not giving up to ask for assistance, some of those things are simple but can make such a difference in life.
Yes. So, such a great analogy with the Bible story. Just the smallest amount of relief can really make a big difference. We're going to take another break and be right back with former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, author of the book My Two Elaines. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We are continuing our discussion with former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, author of the book My Two Elaines, about his nearly 20-year journey caring for his beloved wife Elaine while she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And you really have some poignant stories, and you're trying to help other caregivers when they might cross the same bridges that you had to cross.
One very specific example, I would try and be, when Elaine was in assisted living memory care, I tried to be with her as much as possible. So we're having lunch one day, and she starts to cry. I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she says, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband. I didn't do that. But here is what that means to caregivers and to friends and so forth. It is not necessary for her to know my name in order for hearts to touch. Hearts can touch by holding hands, by giving a hug, by singing a song. And many times, friends of caregivers and even caregivers become so distraught. I understand how the pain can be there when your loved one doesn't remember your name, but that's not important. The importance is to help our loved one live their best life possible. How do we do that? We join their world, but we also do that by looking for these moments of joy and hearts touching.
So she was falling in love with you and you were taking such wonderful care of her. How did you handle that when she said, I'm starting to love you more than my husband?
Well, it's just one more example of being a caregiver. You just don't know what's going to happen next. And as I meditated and thought about it, I concluded again, she doesn't have to know my name. Our hearts are touching. Mm-hmm. That's the best I can do. And what a wonderful feeling that was to know that our hearts were touching.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't correct her and say, darling, I am your husband.
No, I was on a good roll. What do you think I'm going to do? I don't want to change your mind.
It feels good when someone says, I love you so much. So talk about some other things that caregivers can do. You mentioned song, and I've heard that music is really one of those wonderful ways to touch the deep innermost part of someone who has Alzheimer's.
Without a question. To understand the impact of music and what it can do, we listen to a lot of Patsy Cline. And also in my era, there's a fellow by the name of Mitch Miller, and he had sing-along with Mitch. So Elaine is in her own world, and she's not understanding what's going on. And all of a sudden, we're playing music, and we're singing, and even church songs with strong Christian background. It made a difference in her life, and all of a sudden, this person in the fog is now coming and singing songs and smiling and so forth. And so, yet, being a caregiver is tough, but there are moments of joy that a caregiver can find and even just simply more appreciate. The first Marty would never get a thrill out of singing a Christian song with his wife as much as the second Marty singing a song with his wife, or even looking at a bird or understanding the beauty of a flower. The first Marty would be too busy to do any of that. And so the second Marty really developed a greater appreciation for love of music, love of beauty, just wonderful, great things, a butterfly flying across a field.
Well, I'm really glad you said that, because it is daunting to be a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's, but you're saying that you were blessed along the way too, and you grew as a person. So that is very hopeful as well. We're going to take one final break and be right back with former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, author of the book My Two Elaines. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We could talk about this for hours. Marty, talk about where folks can get your book, My Two Elaines, and find out more about you.
Well, thank you. We do have a website, mytwoelaines.com, all one word, and that would be a good beginning. Also, I want to do everything I can to help caregivers learn, cope, and survive, and so I'm willing to travel any place and talk to anybody about it. It can make a difference. The book, of course, through Amazon or through, I think, any of your favorite book sellers would be very good. I want to encourage people to look at that book, because the feedback is that it has made a difference. Someone once said that as there was Dr. Spock, and you would not dare have a child without Dr. Spock, going back into my era, someone said that you don't want to go on the Alzheimer's journey without taking a look at my book, because it is truly something which can give a person an insight how to learn, cope, and survive. I am so grateful for your time and for the opportunity to talk about this, because it is such a painful, agonizing disease to deal with. And the fact of what you are doing in healthy living is so important. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for your incredible work and for being here today. And I definitely hope a lot of people will read the book. It's certainly going to help many people. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next week.